Look, I'm a huge fan of Zelda, but honestly, here's what I think of Skyward Sword.
How could you do that? This is the only Zelda that goes into the rich history of the Master Sword.
Okay. Shut up, nerd. Anyways, so really, the thing about this game is it does everything I love about Zelda wrong. The world's not great. The actual gameplay isn't nearly as fun as any of the other Zelda games. And a lot of the weird backtracking and everything else in this game just ultimately suck. And I've really struggled to play through this game. I had it on the Wii, I have it on the Switch now, and I'm just not a fan. And in this video, I'm going to go deep into why I think this is probably one of the worst 3D Zelda games. I was a part of the huge hype train when it was coming to Twilight Princess, and I myself got that on GameCube and was obsessed. That game felt like the logical evolution in the 3D Zelda series by adding this larger open world with a lot to explore, and it felt just full. Felt like there was a lot to do in Twilight Princess, and it just felt like Nintendo was really accomplishing something that to me felt special. And it's really unfortunate that when Skyward Sword came out, I wasn't sure what to expect, but I thought I was going to be getting something even more epic than Twilight Princess, and in turn, that's not what we got at all. Instead, what we ended up with was this weird, fragmented Zelda where you're going to not this massive world that you're exploring and learning about, but basically just sequenced off areas. And to start, my first biggest issue with it is the lack of Hyrule Field really hurt this game. Now, I know you're going to get some people who are saying, well, you know, Wind Waker didn't really have a Hyrule Field, but Wind Waker had an interesting overworld. Wind Waker had a world that felt like it was exciting to explore. And it's like they tried to take that formula and apply it to the Sky, but the problem is Skyloft and the world surrounding it are not fun. There's nothing really exciting there. There's not really anywhere worth exploring in the Sky. And that might sound trivial, but I grew up on Ocarina of Time, and when I was able to traverse through that world, that was something that to me felt special. It felt like there was something exciting going on. And yes, the N64 did clever ways of fragmenting off different areas, but Nintendo made it feel like it was together. But by simply just adding this really piss-poor design sky world and then dropping a bunch of little portals within it, really made this feel like Nintendo wasn't even trying. And it took away from the wonder of Zelda, it took away from the wonder of this world, and again, Twilight Princess felt like it was trying to maximize the GameCube technology to really bring that out. And it really felt like Twilight Princess was kind of at this peak, and then Skyward Sword kind of just dropped the ball entirely when it came to an exciting overworld.
Yeah, but Twilight Princess wasn't even that good.
Now, honestly, man, shut up. Anyways, so when you go beyond that, let's actually look at the actual world. So you have 3 different portals or areas that you could end up in. And the first one's probably the best one, which is Faron Woods. I was okay with that. I thought that area felt mostly vibrant. It felt like there was something interesting going on. But then as you start exploring it further, there's no proper character development like you had in previous Zelda games. It didn't feel like you ended up in anywhere exciting beyond a couple little fragmented mini temple type segment areas and then an actual temple. And that to me was the peak of those different portals you dropped in. Don't even get me started about the desert territories or even the Elden Volcano territories. Those are both areas that to me were completely lacking in terms of appeal. And I think the biggest issue I have is it's not like these are territories that get fleshed out in an intelligent way where you're getting more and more into them and there's something more refreshing or exciting coming along the horizon. There really isn't. What ends up happening is you just basically keep backtracking through Skyward Sword, going from Skyloft between areas and Nintendo's trying to almost force you to find that area even somewhat interesting, but it's not. And then you're going back and forth into these different portals or different territories, and Nintendo adds just a little bit more. But that little bit more is never really exciting. Probably the most exciting part of the desert territory was the ghost pirate ship, but even that felt poorly stitched together when you really think about it. And the actual pirate ship itself, while it was cool getting onto it and getting into it, the interior of it seems so barren. And that's another thing I want to highlight. Previous Zeldas felt like they really maximized the spaces to make them feel like they were lived in or feel like there was a living world around you. And in each of these portals and each of the territories you go through, they feel very hollow and very empty. You go through the ghost pirate ship and it feels like Nintendo really just rushed along putting this together and didn't really care about the atmosphere around it. And it really made this Zelda feel plain. That's probably part of the reason I dislike these different portals so much and I dislike these different territories so much, because there doesn't really seem to be anything exciting going on in them. They all seem very slow, they all seem very just boring. Especially the desert territory, at least the volcano area, there was Elden Volcano, there was some actual somewhat interesting design choices, but even once you get into some of the more temple-based areas, again, they feel very empty. They don't feel like there's much life to them, and I think this just made this Zelda game feel very confused. And then the last thing that I really want to go over is, I understand Nintendo is known for a lot of their, let's say, almost gimmicky hardware choices and gimmicky devices, but this was probably one of the worst implementations of a gimmicky device that Nintendo's done, and I get it. The Wii at the time, I was a big fan of the Wii, and I loved the idea of using your Wii Remote as a sword or using it as a gun in different games. I thought that was a great idea. But I didn't think it worked very well in Twilight Princess, and it didn't really work well at all in Skyward Sword. If anything, it got worse. It was cool at first as a novelty that you can move Link's sword around and it can cut different areas and you can slice different things from different directions. But eventually what this turned into, especially when I was playing this on the Wii, was I just kept shaking as quick as possible to kill any enemy. Even if I missed their guard, there wasn't enough of a damage response that it really mattered. So the Wii Remote for combat didn't work so well, and especially getting into some of the boss fights, it just felt incredibly annoying.
But the Wii Remote was the coolest tech at the time. This just sounds like a skill issue, bud.
Okay, whatever you say. Anyways. And you get into different items and different weapon use, and this all just doesn't feel great. It just feels like, I understand Nintendo's intentions in trying to make this feel like you were involved in the action, but this just turned into another Waggle game that came out on the Switch, or the Wii in my opinion. Now, I'll argue that the Switch version did a better job of fixing this, and I thought this actually played a lot better with the joystick, but it wasn't by much. And even on the joystick, on the Switch, it's just very much, I'm just jamming the joystick as much as possible, hoping that I can hit something, especially at some of the bosses, hoping I can, get through their guard and hit them. But it just doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't feel what Nintendo was intending to do by creating something, new and unique. It just feels like more of a pain. And I wish there would have been an option for traditional controls as opposed to what we got. And this leads up to kind of the issue overall, the overall theme of this game, and that's Nintendo seemed like they were kind of confused at this point in the Zelda series. It seemed like Nintendo was trying very hard to keep the series fresh, but didn't really know how to bring it there.
But this made a lot of creative choices like stamina and breakable seals.
And I know some people thought, you know, the destructible shield and the stamina bars were cool ideas. They were cool ideas for Breath of the Wild because that was a world that it incentivized you to want to increase those things, increase your stamina bar, because there was something cool to explore. In Skyward Sword, there wasn't. Skyward Sword, this felt like something that Nintendo threw in hoping that it would keep some gamers feeling like, wow, this is fresh, but it's not. Things like the shield breaking down were not exciting. They were honestly very, very poorly implemented as far as I'm concerned, right? They weren't things that felt like they had much meaning to the game, whereas Breath of the Wild, part of your weapons degrading and part of your stamina depleting were all incentives to explore more and find new weapons, find better weapons, upgrade your stamina wheel. Skyward Sword doesn't really give you that. And when I combine all these things, the poorly designed overworld, the poorly designed areas that you go to or portals that you drop into, the poorly designed combat, this game has been one of the hardest Zelda games that I've ever played for me to actually get through. I bought it back when it came out on the Wii. I had the special edition box with the soundtrack and special Wii remote, and I probably got right to the desert area, and at that point I pretty much stopped playing it entirely. It was only once I was waiting for Tears of the Kingdom that I decided, you know what, I'm gonna pick this up and revisit it because maybe I was wrong. Turns out I wasn't wrong. The game's not good. As far as Zeldas go, I've only been slogging through this purely because of my dedication to trying to see if there's gonna be something good happening throughout the game. But unfortunately, I've put way too many hours into this game and finally finished it, and I have to say, of all the Zelda games, this is probably one of the weakest 3D Zeldas that I've ever played.
Well, you just sound like a guy who doesn't appreciate the world of Zelda.